Amazon's Lord of the Rings television series, Rings of Power, has been an absolute dumpster fire so far in terms of its marketing. Lord of the Rings fans aren't at all happy about what they have seen so far. NPCs do not think Rings of Power looks all that interesting since they don't even know that much about it. And every comment section of every trailer and clip from this television series is just a giant comment war of this person versus that person versus these people, and it's a complete freaking mess. You've seen it, I've seen it, we've all seen it. It's gonna be a wildfire when this show comes out, and seeing as I am a massive fan of Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, the inspiration behind his books, and having even created the Lord of the Rings leveling challenge in World of Warcraft, which many of you guys know and love, thank you guys very much, I figured that I would throw my 2 cents into the ring. But I'm not here to say the same crap that everybody else is talking about. I've got something different to say. Everybody else is talking about woke politics, and NPC appealing propaganda and political crap this and political crap that, all ruining the true nature of Tolkien. But I have to say that many of the people who are defending Tolkien and his original work, well, many of them don't even understand Tolkien's original inspiration for Lord of the Rings. And that is what I want to focus on today. Today, I want to talk about why I think this show is going to potentially fail for 2 very important and foundation-shattering reasons. Part 1. The bread from heaven. In Tolkien's own words, The Lord of the Rings is a Catholic-inspired piece of literature. In fact, Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's entire universe is considered a masterpiece of Catholic writing and is considered must-reads, even being used in churches to teach themes and complex ideas to Catholic minds all around the world. Concepts like divine law versus natural law, concupiscence, the limitations of man, and so on and so forth. All throughout The Lord of the Rings, there are parallels to church teachings, theology, as well as moral theology. In fact, many of the scenes that people find to be so powerful in the books and even in the movies are powerful because they are explorations of Catholic philosophy. A good example of this could be the character of Boromir, who for many people, that's their favorite character. And it's my favorite character too, so, you know, gotta talk about Boromir, right? Boromir is a proud defender of Gondor, someone who believes in the strength of his people, but like all men, Boromir possesses concupiscence. Now, for those that don't know what that word means in a Catholic context, concupiscence is essentially mankind's almost instinctual, like leaning towards evil and not doing the will of God. It comes from our fallen nature, and it comes from that stain, that mark of original sin that's dwelling upon us. But anyway, Boromir is motivated by what we could say are objectively good things. However, evil, in its nature, always takes what is good and twists it into something that is bad. Where once Boromir was determined to protect Gondor, his home and his people from the orcs and other horrors of Mordor and from around, the world, the influence of evil, the ring, corrupts this idea in him, driving him to attack Frodo in an attempt to kill him so that he can steal the ring for himself and bring it back to Gondor. You guys have read the books, you've seen the movies, you know what I'm talking about. But the funny thing is, if you think about it, this is exactly what any orc from Mordor would have done if he had come across Frodo. The orc would try to kill Frodo, take the ring, and bring it back to Mordor, right? Effectively, Boromir became the very thing that he was fighting against because he did not recognize the evil growing in his heart, twisting his morals to evil and turning him into the very enemy that he was fighting against. And it was only after his failings does he repent and do a form of penance where he dies defending Merry and Pippin, sacrificing himself nobly for his original cause, as well as for his friends. The evil in his heart has now been defeated, and it has been restored to good after he acknowledged the error in his thinking and in his ways. Tolkien was an Orthodox Catholic, and so it's no surprise then, like, what he's going for here with his theme. Boromir is a perfect reflection of all of us, where we are motivated by good and noble things, but the enemy corrupts our good and turns us towards a wickedness that we didn't even think we were capable of, and we didn't even know we were heading in that direction. Like a businessman who got started just trying to provide for his family, and now he does shady and illegal deals under the table that could lead to the harm of other people. Or a kid who was once really passionate about writing and he really wanted to make some inspirational books, but now he's just filling his writings, novels with propaganda and smut and pornographic nonsense just because he wants to appeal to a bigger audience for the sake of money rather than telling a good story. There is a Boromir in each and every single person, as well as a need to repent of our failings. And I say all of this as just one example from one character in one part in one book. And I could say a lot more on this topic. Let me tell you what, I'm just keeping this kind of brief for the sake of the video, but as you can imagine, this is a pretty big subject. Now, the reason I'm saying all of this, though, is because Tolkien's religious views, the teaching of Christ's church, moral theology, Catholic philosophy, and so on and so forth, do I expect Amazon to honor this in any way, shape, or form? Of course not. How many Orthodox Catholic priests do you think that they got working on the Rings of Power set? Like offering guidance, how many do you think? I'm gonna tell you right now, zero. Zero. How many actors do you think were schooled on anything like the communion of saints, the institution of the sacrament of communion, and so on and so forth? I don't think they wasted 1 second on any of this. At least in the Lord of the Rings movies, honoring Tolkien's Catholic approach to writing his books at least seemed to be of some importance. I mean, check out this quote from Peter Jackson.
Well, we didn't want to put any of our own, certainly in terms of the thematic material, we didn't want to put any of our own baggage. I mean, we had no interest in putting our messages into this movie, but we thought that we should honor Tolkien by putting his messages into it. And we thought he cared about things. The countryside and the rise of evil, and he cared passionately about certain issues. And we thought what we should do to honor him is to make sure that what he cared about ends up in the movie. That's what we tried to do.
You can see that Peter Jackson and his team respected Tolkien's views in many elements of the movie. My favorite of which being the Lord of the Rings soundtrack. I think everybody loves the soundtrack, man. And so many parts of the soundtrack, I mean, it sounds like it's straight out of a Catholic mass. It's Gregorian chant, dude. Like, just listen to these two side by side. Now, this is something that I very much appreciated about the movies, the fact that they did their best to add a little bit of a Catholic touch here and there to really honor the spirit of Tolkien, who he was, and just his faith. And then we have this multi-billion-dollar corporation, Amazon, who I do not believe even possesses the capacity to understand the basics of church teaching, considering that their company values seem to stand against, well, pretty much all of them. All the things that people connect to in the Lord of the Rings, the fellowship between friends, the sacrifice, the love of one's home, the influence of evil, the workings of good, the silent magic that exists that penetrates all, the angelic, the demonic. Amazon knows that these things are interesting and cool and make for a heartstring pulling story, but they don't know why. Because they don't know Christ, what he did, or why. Amazon, I expect, is going to fill this TV series with a ton of garbage, rooted in the heresy of modernism and humanistic ideas that have no place in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Instead of making beautiful references, for example, to Our Lady, Queen of Heaven, and showing just how her presence alone inspires awe and wonder in the hearts of even the most serious of men, they're probably just going to turn a character like Galadriel into some badass warrior that nobody cares for, instead of focusing on creating a story that examines the relationship between each and every person, their relationship to their own fallen nature, and their determination to do good in the face of great evil. Amazon will instead focus on just another sex scene, I wager. The point is, I am not expecting Amazon to honor this element of Lord of the Rings at all. And any Catholic will tell you that a person's spirituality determines his entire experience within his life, because spirituality is at the core of who a person is, and this show looks spiritually dead. Part 2. Return to the past. If the spirit of Tolkien's world is Catholic, then the world itself is heathen in its nature. Specifically, Lord of the Rings is primarily inspired by Northern European mythology and paganism, everything from its gods like Odin inspiring characters like Gandalf to the elves and so on and so forth. Tolkien was a massive fan of old European folk tales and religion, so it's fascinating that he created this uniquely Catholic-themed story set within a heathen world of fantasy. And this raises me to my second point, in that while writing Lord of the Rings, Tolkien clearly honored the source material that so many of these ideas came from, which isn't really all that surprising considering that, well, he was an Englishman. But chances are before his family ended up down in Africa, while living in England, they might have had some Scandinavian ancestry going back many hundreds of years from when the Danes invaded Britannia and settled the Danelaw during the Viking Age. Tolkien was obsessed with stories like Beowulf, the Scandinavian languages, and even recently his translation of the epic monster-slaying epic was finally published and put on shelves. Highly recommended, by the way. Tolkien even helped spearhead a better understanding of this pre-Christian world, presenting a deeper and richer analysis of the heathen culture, religion, and beliefs, which previously were just kind of discarded as being these outdated, old, and silly folktales. Tolkien, perhaps because of the fact that he was Catholic and friends with people like G.K. Chesterton, probably believed something similar to what Chesterton did. That being that in order to better understand Christianity and its beauty, you need to actually look at it truly from the outside. In G.K. Chesterton's book, The Everlasting Man, he talks about how the pagan, the true pagan, would be a better person to see the beauty of Christianity than the discount Christian, simply because they do not have Christianity or anything like it in their lives. They do not have salvation, they do not have hope, eternity, a complete theology, philosophy, and so on and so forth. And even if they do not have a 2,000-year-old institution like the church, whose whole purpose is to encourage the world to seek objective truth, because to seek truth is to seek God. What I'm getting at here is that Tolkien appreciated the pagan world because it was pagan and because it was not Christian. There were certainly similarities between the two, but these were two dramatically different worldviews that took a lot of study to fully understand. I myself studied pre-Christian European religion in college, fun fact. And it is some pretty wild stuff to try and break your current moral means of looking at the world and society in order to better understand one's ancestors and what they believed in. Now, what does all this have to do with Amazon, though? To Amazon, European mythology and folk tales and languages and all that mumbo jumbo, these are just tools for telling a story. I mean, take a look at the recent Marvel Thor movies and you will see what I'm talking about. What was once a rich religion of millions of people has been reduced down to comic book tier entertainment. In Rings of Power, Amazon will need a monster for the heroes to fight, for example, and so they'll reach into the baggie of old folk monsters and they'll grab something without any understanding of what that monster is, what made it special, and why for many it had great religious significance. And that really is my biggest gripe with what I've seen so far with Rings of Power. That being that the things that inspired Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, the Catholic Church and Northern European paganism, they're just being used as tools in order to churn a profit. And that bothers me because these are the foundations of Lord of the Rings and they're just not being respected. I'm going to say it right now. I don't think Amazon even cares at all about anything that Tolkien wrote. What they care about is that people like Lord of the Rings. They don't know why people like Lord of the Rings or why Lord of the Rings gets at the spirit of people who read and watch it. That don't matter. Lord of the Rings is a means to a profit, and so they will try to milk it for all it's got, even if they destroy the very foundations and inspirations for the text along the way. Now, could I be wrong about this? Of course I could be. Show could come out and be fantastic. Will I end up being proved wrong, though? I highly doubt it. These are my 2 quick thoughts on this series, fellas. Let me know what you think. Are you gonna watch it? And if not, what has given you the reason for pause? Let us know down in the comment section down below. I'll see you all with my next video, and let's see how Rings of Power turns out.